And I asked Dorothy Mason, a friend of mine, to set the stage with me about what it means to be a keeper. So I'll share with you now the heart of our conversation. This is a picture of Dorothy and me in 2017 when she invited me, the only time I've met her in person, to be a keynote speaker at the conference that she was part of organizing at Northfield in Massachusetts. We immediately recognized each other as soul sisters. And I asked Dorothy what she would want me to say about her so that she could be represented because she chose not to be here today. And I'll explain a bit about that later. We do share a devotion for the earth and a love of the symbolic world as a tangible guiding force in our lives. That we have in common. From her home in Connecticut, she works as a psychotherapist, an interfaith minister, and a ceremonialist. She uses Reiki, energy work, dreams, and deep imagery, and combines these with her respect for the wisdom traditions and mystical teachings of ancient cultures. She really is a wise and loving crone, and I'm thankful to have her as a friend. I gave Dorothy a week to ponder whether, because of some of the circumstances in her life right now, it was appropriate for her to be a guest in the session. And she got back to me exactly at the same time I was asking her toward the end of the week. And she said, "No, I cannot do it." And we laughed when we had a conversation on the phone instead of her joining us, because I said, well, it's obvious that knowing when to say no is an essential part of being a keeper. So she modeled that exquisitely at the beginning here. When she does vision quests with women, she asks everybody at the start, do you love yourself enough to listen with the ears of your heart to the deeper voices of yourself speaking, and to open to the songs of the natural world? Dorothy began by saying that she had been pondering the thoughts before we had our conversation on the phone. And the first thing she said is, we don't have templates or initiations in our culture for being a keeper. Yet we all have Indigenous roots somewhere back in our history. So how do we remember our ancient roots? She went on, in our Western culture, we're becoming more aware and appreciative of Indigenous wisdom and ways of being with the natural world. Recognizing that everything is interconnected, an Indigenous approach offers a holistic, relational view rather than a hierarchical paradigm. So, how do we relate to each other? Not just our fellow human beings, but in our sensory kinship with the trees, the rivers and oceans, all the animals, the creatures in the sky, on the land, and even in the soil. How do we relate? Our earth is a beautiful, entire field of community for us to be with. And we enter this field through silence, with patience, and deep listening. Dorothy said that being a keeper implies guarding, and taking care. But then she went on and said, it also means taking our place in the web of life. I agreed with her, and I commented that there are pockets of people who are dedicated to doing sacred ceremony as a way of spiritually connecting with the earth. They're springing up everywhere. However, Within indigenous cultures, the entire community would be involved in these rituals, consciously coordinating with nature, the seasons, and the cycles of the moon. I loved it when Dorothy said this line: "Our life on this planet is a holy walk of learning, growing, and opening to the responsibility of sharing our gifts." She also said, "Our life is an altar." And when she went on and said, "However, we may not fully appreciate this until we're an elder and open to these deeper ways of knowing and being." Nothing like having a grandchild to bring out the elder in us. A keeper tends both the invisible imaginal realm as well as the manifest world. We cultivate this realm by deepening our connection to the natural world, honoring our intuition, and tuning into guidance from our dreams. Following this inner way, we hold each other and everything in creation with love. Meanwhile, we consciously let go of our endless striving and our thirst for power. A keeper stays very grounded in the here and now, while also tending what's emerging in the imaginal realms. How do we cultivate our awareness of the numinous inner life of the world? By honoring it, by making it part of our lives, and by sharing it. These are some of the holy responsibilities of being a keeper. The earth is calling forth our cellular remembering now in ways that are simply too powerful to ignore. We gather in sacred circles to let Earth's living wisdom gently rise, as it has been doing already in this conversation, in the space between us. Each of us holds some golden threads of the Earth's living wisdom. What is yours to tend? I'm using quotes here from Stephen Herod Booner's book, Plant Intelligence and the Imaginal Realm: Beyond the Doors of Perception into the Dreaming of Earth. Some of you may already be familiar with Stephen's work because he has written over 23 books, and he's been a head researcher for the Foundation of Gaian Studies for the past 30 years. I, I noticed in one of his write-ups, he said he's a polymath, which is a person of vast knowledge, a wide-ranging knowledge and learning. But I found this interesting. He was raised in a family of healers, and it was his great-grandfather who inspired him to become the kind of healer that American medicine no longer has a place for. So he has been true to that in his explorations of work with plants and the imaginal realm. So these are direct quotes. The first one was Stephen quoting Thoreau, saying, "It is only when we forget all our learning that we begin to know." The deeper dimensions of the world are a great deal older than our human artifacts, and they are a great deal more alive. Something new enters our experience when we reach out with that non physical part of us and touch the wildness of the world. Something new enters. An intelligence as subtle and sophisticated as our own, but very non human, reaches out and communicates with us with a language very different than our own. And we've all experienced that even today in our listening for what a keeper is, in our listening for a message from the earth. The Greeks called this a thesis, the touch of a non human soul upon the deeps of us. And they knew that ours touches them in return. What we now call the quantum multiverse was known in older times as the mythic world. Persian mystics recognized that there was a world where the mythic and the mundane interpenetrated each other. They called it the Imaginal World. The Persian scholar Henry Corbin coined the term mundus imaginalis. We perceive the field of the imaginal realm through a three-dimensional feeling space. That's why we work through the heart for our listening connection, in part through to the earth. The imaginal realm emerges on the field of our inner vision as images. And I love this phrase, the exact sensorial imagination. That exact sensorial imagination that brought the imaginal snake and the wounded real snake together, in my experience. In these moments of communication, in a charged state of awareness, we are opened up to what we are and what we are not. And that is when the solutions we need emerge. I'll read that one more time. In these moments, these precious moments of communication, in a charged state of awareness, which is what we are experiencing this afternoon together, we are opened up to what we are, and we get a glimpse of what we are not. And it's in that space, in these moments, when the solutions we need emerge. I wrote these poems back at the beginning of the last millennium, 120 of them, listening to what Gaia would say through the different single flower essences. And this is the one that I intuitively tested belonged for us today. Gaia says, "Do not be ashamed of your fiery root or the soft pulse beating there. I live where the fire ignites all promise and warmth in your core. Honor the flames and the drumbeat tempo, the power of creation pulsing in you." who felt the call to be a keeper at this gathering, who took the time to listen to your own heart, to feel the power of creation rising in you, and the blessing, the sacred blessing that flows between us and the earth in this time together in circle.